Just a few remarks today. My wife and I went to Saratoga, the Saratoga Battlefield, which is about 20 minutes, 25 minutes from home. And it was a gorgeous day, the sun was shining, and we thought we'd just take a little trip. Now, in order to fill you in and tell you what the background is of this area, it is an actual battlefield where a very decisive battle was won by the Americans. And the outline is as follows. A few strategies and facts during the Battle of Saratoga. The British sought to occupy Albany. It's a connecting point to cut off the link between the colonies. They wanted to control the Hudson River in order to cut off New England from the rest of the colonies. And that was as a matter of weakness. And the British won small battles on their way, but the Americans surprised them at a wooden plateau to block the British. And surprisingly, the British counterattacked and won the first battle in Saratoga. But the second battle of Saratoga was another surprise move, and it caused the British to surrender on October 1777. They were outnumbered and beaten, and they had to make their way back home. I thought this was just a good introduction, and from there I want to show you some pictures of the actual area and some pictures of the surrounding landscape and how we actually got there, and just to give you an idea. Okay, we'll stop here. We're leaving the driveway now. You can see our house in the background. We're backing out onto our fairway lane and then turn around and go towards the Route 50. Now, Route 50 is going to Burnt Hills, which is a little town, on our way to Saratoga. And we're coming up at a stop sign. There we go. And at the stop sign, we'll make a right turn, and we'll keep going. And you'll see a little bit of the kind of surroundings that you have in our development. Nothing but trees. It's a nice little country road, but well paved. And it goes to a country store in Burnt Hills. And from there we'll go on to Route 50 and then on to Saratoga. While we were on the way to the battlefield, we came by Lake Saratoga. And of course we couldn't resist. You just had to look out, and it was a gorgeous day, and we had to have a cup of coffee, sit outside, and just look at the boats. And that was very enjoyable. And now we got back on the road, and we turned in. Right here, you can see the brown sign. It's for the National Park. And this is the entrance to the park. Goes for a little while, and I'll show you the sign. This sign tells you it's the Saratoga National Historical Park, and it's part of the U.S. Department of the Interior's National Park Service. Now we're coming to the actual battlefield. When you look over the mountains in the back and you look at the woods and you look at the field itself, it looks so peaceful, and yet there's so much history here. This was the decisive battle between the British and the Americans, and the Americans were supported by Hessian troops. Hessian troops, German troops, they were... Battles were farmed out in those days, just like they do today with the Halliburton Company. Nobody mentions much about them, but they're there, and that was an old tradition. And this, again, you can see the fields, and it's kind of moving when you realize that there were troops here many years ago, and some fierce battles took place here, and important generals were fighting. On the British side, it was General John Burgoyne who was fighting, and on the American side it was Horatio Gates, and he was assisted by General Benedict Arnold. During this battle, Benedict Arnold lost a leg, and this little monument is in honor of that particular event. Throughout the museum, we can see several models of showing how the people were dressed during those days, and this is one in particular that was standing out a little bit. This cannon is an exhibit, and it is called a grasshopper. I can imagine the reason for that is probably that thing, once it fired, it probably jumped 3 feet in the air. Here you can see that the cannon was disassembled and carried by 4 soldiers. And there are some more instructions on this particular display. This is a diorama, and it shows Hessian troops behind their redoubt. How are they facing the enemy? And you can see the enemy lines way back there. It's a very nicely done one. Another diorama showing the American troops, and they were hiding out in the woods, and they were hiding behind trees. This is not something the British were accustomed to. In their case, they always were in a straight line, and of course they were fired on and they were actually mowed down, while the Americans were able to evade some of those battles. And here we see the British surrendering to the Americans. This was the end of that battle, and it was very decisive during the war. This building is overlooking the battlefield, and you can see the cannon in front, and you see that the fields are to the right. And inside of this complex, you find movies of the battle. You find, of course, the gift store, and you find other dioramas, a lot of interesting displays. And thereby ends our little trip. We're only about 20 minutes away from home, so it's no big deal to us.